So you should be able to record this too when it's done. Just so you know, in case you want to make clips or something like that. All right,
Cool.
we are live. We're just talking about. Well, first I'll introduce everybody. Like, hey, everybody, I'm joined here with EK. I didn't know your last name was Powell. EK Powell from
Yep.
What's Good English. A fascinating individual who I ran into on the podcast I do over at the Left Wing Pod on YouTube. And EK, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. I don't think I'm not fascinated.
I do. Well, listen. I do not hand out these invitations to just anyone, my friend. I'm very selective on these. It's actually kind of hit or miss. I've seen this on the show, and I've seen this on TikTok lives that I do, and I've only done like 3 YouTube lives. This is my third or fourth one, but a lot of the content creators that I run across, I'll do interviews with them and I'll expect it to just flow, and it does not. And you realize that a lot of people have the skill to create content, but they're not necessarily great at like extemporaneous speaking. You know,
Mm.
they have to have a plain script to go forward. And when it's just banter back and forth, it's not their skill set. And those are difficult interviews. So I
Yeah,
hurt my back carrying them. But I've been on you many times, and I know that won't be the case.
I appreciate it. It's no, you're right though. It's a different world. It's like I think it's maybe because I'm from like an older generation where it was like, okay, I gotta be more on my like. I mean, we were having these conversations like in person, as opposed to let me just assemble all of my thoughts and then put that into like a really well like made video or like well edited video or whatever.
I was talking to another individual who was telling me his name was Carlos. And Carlos, I think he's 38, 39, he said. And he had recently been divorced and started dating again. And last year. And he was telling me that, his age range of people he'd be interested in and stuff. And he said he noticed that the cutoff seemed to be around 29 or 28 for him because like anybody younger than that, he noticed that there was a barrier in communication, not just with age and experience and stuff, but the fact that younger people, honestly, I hate sounding like a boomer saying stuff like this, but because it's true, because they did not have the same face-to-face interactions that you were forced to have back in the day, and that a lot of your interactions happen through a screen. So when you have to talk to a person and look them in the eye, it's a lot more awkward, a lot more truncated.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like I remember I'm sort of going through this like right now with like one of the videos that I just put out. But like people talking about like sort of the lack of nuance like on like TikTok and Instagram, like the short form video thing. Cause it's like you gotta put out so many disclaimers in order to say like the one thing that you want to say. Like the video I'm talking about is the one where I was talking about the Tracy Chapman song, like after the Grammys, and I was like, like she talked about like working as a cashier and like eventually she had enough money to pay her bill. Like just looking at the lyrics of the song, and
Hmm.
like at the start of the video, I was like I didn't realize how sad of a song that was when I was a kid, and then
Hmm.
like I got people like, and I talked about like just the specific economics of like back in the 80s, like your money went a little bit further. College was like way cheaper. Like you could have that sort of a pipe dream and it could still technically work. And I got people commenting and stitching me talking about you didn't understand the song properly. You missed the whole point of the song. And it's like I said at the beginning of the video, I didn't realize it was such a sad song. Like I shouldn't have to spend like 30 to 45 seconds giving out disclaimers like, okay, so I interpreted the song this way. I understood that she was living in a shelter while she was working as a checkout girl, and I think she dropped out of high school and not college. I shouldn't have to say all of that shit. It should just be like, yo, I'm looking at it from this one particular like economic snapshot, and that's it. What happens in the song is irrelevant. But people was like, you misunderstood everything completely. I'm like, dude, stop.
It is funny. It is true. I don't know. It's fact that's so. the whole thing with fast car and everything, that song is kind of a sad song. And
Yeah.
so the way I interpreted the song was that it's aspirational for the time, but also there's no guarantee it's going to happen. It's kind of like a weird mix of aspiration and despair. It's kind of what I got from the song, at least from when I remember hearing it. That, hey, everything's going to be all right. We're going to make it. But there did seem like an undertone of sadness to it. But I mean, it is art. You interpret it, however you like. And it is. I do think it's funny though when you do put disclaimers like that in videos and people still misunderstand you. I hate that. I hate that so fucking
Yeah,
much. It
yeah,
really gets
yeah.
me. It really gets me.
And it's like I will have the shit on the screen. Like I will be green screening the actual thing. Because like I had a ton of people comment like she was living in a shelter. I'm like, the fucking lyric is right here, but like you think I put this on the screen and just didn't see it and didn't read it? Or other stuff. Like I talk about like how school was cheap. I had all of like I was pointing out how much the school was. I had the actual like class like booklet whatever from like 1981 on a video where it showed the per credit cost and like the full 12 credit rate, and people were like, oh, that's probably just per credit. I'm like, it says it on the screen. I'm having to reply to comments like, if you just look at the screen, you will clearly see this.
How cheap school was is something that, I mean, it's talked about, but not nearly enough, and how incredibly cheap school used to be. A friend of mine named Bridget, I don't know if she's watching right now, but we had this joke we would talk about this actual real event. I did a video on it a while ago about this guy named George P. Burdell. And George P. Burdell was a student who graduated from Georgia Tech University in like 1935 or something like that. It was a long time ago. And the thing about George P. Burdell is that he doesn't exist. He's a figment. He's someone's imagination, because this guy applied to Georgia Tech back in the late 20s or early 30s or something. And they sent him his application form. They accidentally sent him two forms. And he said, oh, that's interesting. I got two forms. So he filled one out for him and one out for a fake guy he just made up to see if they would accept him. And they did. And so they accepted George P. Burdell and him. He spent the next 4 years in this like convoluted prank where him and his buddies would, they'd finish their homework. Then they'd do George's homework. And then it was time for the test. They would take someone would take the test twice, and they did this for years. And the university never caught on. And then when the graduation came, there is an official, diploma for Bachelor of Science in like Architectural Engineering or something from Georgia Tech University to George B. Burdell, a human being who never existed. And it's I mean, if you go to Georgia Tech's website, George P. Burdell is listed as one of the most famous alumni. And people have been running with the joke for a long time. Like George P. Burdell, he served in World War II because some guy from Georgia Tech went to this aircraft unit in Britain, and he assigned George P. Burdell to the roster. And so George P. Burdell flew on like 12 combat missions until they got some new like operations officer who found it and got rid of it, the name, probably for, safety concerns and everything. So people aren't searching for this invisible guy. And then there was a grad student's project at Georgia Tech that Jake's here. Jake, the Culture Bumpkin. You guys check his channel out. It's very great. But they were creating a satellite. I think they were, to orbit the Earth. And so whenever they launched the satellite, they had like a little brick in there with the name of all 28 grad students that worked on it. They put George P. Burdell's name on it. So they're having a lot of fun with this. I love it. I love that they roll with that. But the whole point of that is, he enrolled. School was so fucking cheap in the 20s and 30s that you could enroll someone and pay for the credits as a prank and not worry about it. Like that's a funny joke, but you wouldn't spend 80 grand per year to do it or something.
Yeah, of course not. Like actually, like in making that video about the pricing of schools, like I went and I looked up how expensive it is to go to my school. Like I went to Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville. It's like everybody, when you hear Southern Illinois, you think of like the Salukis and like the main SIU campus. That's not the one that I went to. I went to the sister school, which is like a super tiny little college town. It was about like 40-ish minutes away from St. Louis. Like it was much cheaper and everything. And I remember like I would go to St. Louis with some friends every now and then, and we would end up going by Washington University, which is
Oh,
in Missouri
yeah.
for yeah. And like at that time, I think their tuition was something like 10 grand a year or some shit like that. And I was like, damn, like people out there spending 10 grand a year for that, private school, that's insane. And that's how expensive it is to
That
go to my like tiny little middle of nowhere school right now.
this is true. It is crazy. Uh Jake says George sounds like a real Forrest Gump type character. It's true. Yeah, the guy has many adventures. I encourage everyone to look up George P. Burdell. It's fantastic. No, but the price of the school, like so Washington University. My brother went to St. Louis University,
Yeah.
and Washington University. He was a PA student there, and that's when I learned about Washington University. It's like one of the best medical schools in the country. And yeah, 10 grand a year back then was a lot, but now that's it's just spending on
Yeah, I
anything
don't even
pretty
want
much.
to imagine like right now.
It's so when I was man, I can't remember. I wish I could remember now. But when I was in a recruiter in the army, uh people would go through talking about the GI Bill. And that if you sign up for 3 years of active duty in the army, you got your GI Bill, which would pay for 4 years of college at any public university. And so the maximum at the time was, I think it was Pittsburgh. I think it was somewhere in Pittsburgh was like the most expensive public university in the country, and it was like 21 grand a year, I think. And that's a public school. I mean, that granted, it
That's
was the most
insane.
expensive one, but I mean, still, that's like it's insane how out of control this has gotten.
Yeah, it's like it. I mean, Reagan. Like you can pretty much
Most
blame
of
everything
most
on
of
Reagan and
societal
everything.
ills can be traced back to Reagan. It's shocking how many, honestly. It's shocking how many.
Yeah, yeah. It's I saw a meme a few days ago where it was like like the year 2000 whatever, and like some like random like college student is typing like, oh, everything is Bush's fault. And then like 10 years later or something like that, after they got like some more education with and everything behind them, they're typing, oh well, the whole political system is like full of like all these different varying ideologies and people fighting for this and this. And then like the final panel is like everything is Reagan's
Nope.
fault.
Turns out everything's turns out everything's like a true villainous character in human history, not just American history, but it's pretty bad. But anyway, so DK, I don't actually know a whole lot about your background, and I would like to, for the edification of myself and the listeners, viewers, could you tell us a little bit where you're from and what your experiences were, and what actions shape your philosophy in life?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So, I'm from Peoria, Illinois, like tiny little town about 3.5 hours south of Chicago. It wasn't like super tiny. It felt much larger to me as a kid than it
Hmm.
does now, or whatever. But yeah, like my parents split up when I was like 4 or whatever. So like moved in with my grandmother for a while when my mom was like out on the grind or whatever to like try to build a life. Um, and yeah, always was kind of like so I kind of started like making just content in general, like with language based stuff, hence like the What's Good English name. I learned Spanish like as an adult, and I was like, cool, I want to like give back to like the YouTube community that like helped me through like all the language stuff too. I actually majored in mass communication, so like technically what I'm doing right now is using my degree
Hmm.
like like over a decade after I actually got it. Um but yeah, so and like I wanted to do like linguistics based stuff like back then as well, but like at the time, like in college, I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I maybe want to write something, like I maybe want to do something creative. So like I went into that line. And like toward the end of my college, like I was like, oh, okay, well, actually I really want to do this linguistics thing, but like I can't pay for like to change my major and pay for all these extra classes. I
Right.
should have done it because college was cheap as fuck.
That was getting easier. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, I kind of got my start as far as like making content, like talking about language stuff, and like specifically, I wanted to talk about African American English because it, um, for one, I ran into like a lot of foreigners that just like had trouble understanding like Black people, because our English when we're talking to each other like ain't the same as everybody else's English. So I wanted it to be kind of like a bridge that way, but like also to celebrate it, be something cool that like other Black people could like enjoy. Because you see like random TikToks and stuff that's like, what's how do you say such and such in Black English? And like
Mhm.
those of Black people would just like come on one up in each other, like, oh yeah, we be saying that, we be saying that. So I kind of like wanted to start making like content about that, really focusing on it, really approaching it from like a academic, educational type of thing. Also make it, easy to be understood. So then I actually ended up getting into TikTok because I was watching all of the like how to grow your YouTube channel videos, and they were like, "Oh, you need to hop on TikTok and promote yourself like that." So I was like, "All right, whatever." And then like at the time I had like maybe like 600 or 700 subscribers on YouTube. And that's at the time when you like submit a video and like maybe 30 people see it, and you
Mhm.
probably know like 17 or 18 of the people that saw it. So the first TikTok video I submit gets like 700 views, and I'm like, oh,
Mm.
this is much
All
different.
right. Let's go.
He got like 700 views in like the first hour. I'm like, damn, like I got videos I submitted 2 months ago and it got 700 views on it. So then I started like going down and making more short form content and everything like that. And then like I talk way more about like political stuff now, but I mean like approaching African American English like as like and saying that is like a valid form like of English and that it deserves respect and all that is a political statement. So
Yeah.
not like too far away from politics. Um, but yeah, it's like at a certain point I was just like, I gotta say something about XYZ. I can't just like I can't just stay focused on this one topic. And two, like I noticed, and I talked to another creator about this as well, that was like a children's book author, and she
Mhm.
was, thinking about making like an African American English version of like some of her children's books, and then she decided not to, like specifically because she was like, I looked at all the people that were like commenting, gassing me up, telling me that I should do this, and they weren't the people that I would be making the books for.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Yeah. And that's sort of like the same stuff that I was experiencing like in my comments whenever I was like, okay, this is like the grammar that is underpinning this particular thing about African American English was like the people in my comments that were like, oh yeah, give me more videos, help me out with all this, weren't exactly the audience that like I had intended to make all of that for. So I kind of like pulled back from just like more hard, just like African American English stuff, and just went more directly into like more linguistics sort of talk, and then just like tried to branch off into other topics. Like also like I get bored of one thing and I fall down like a different rabbit hole of like some other topic, and I just want to talk. I just want to do a big info dump about something that I learned. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It, so when I first ran across you on the show, I saw your username was What's Good English, and I didn't know what that was in reference to. And so I was like, all right, so it's something to do with language and whatever. But then I saw you again, and then I invited you on the show, and I was watching your content, and I didn't see a lot about like the English language, and I was like, man, it's like why is he called this? And then I actually I went to your YouTube channel, and the first video I saw was about AAVE, and I was so happy to see that because I have this has been an issue for me for a long time as well. Because growing up now, well, we talk about code switching. I don't code switch. I sound like this all the time, like 100%. It doesn't matter where I am. I don't change anything about how I talk. And so for most of my life, my entire life, a lot of people, black or otherwise, would make fun of me for sounding white. And so I would really be offended by that when I was younger. It really upset me because the way I
Yeah.
interpreted it was, oh, so I'm not using a bunch of slang and double negatives. And so that means that I'm not black, according to you. And I've evolved past that. Like I've evolved past that now where it doesn't actually offend me anymore because it's true that generally like the way I speak is like a more white sounding form of English, the English language. But I was looking at it in the wrong way. It's because you mentioned that the project that you're putting forward is that Black English is not an inferior form of English. And in fact,
Yeah.
there's no such thing as an inferior form of English. It's
Yeah.
at least that's how I look at it, is that what is good? I feel so dumb that I didn't realize that's what you meant by what's good English, because it's something I say all the time, is that what we describe as good English is English that's decided by the people in power and in academia and in authority. They are
Yeah.
the ones who get to say this is good, proper English when they have no right to do so. I mean, yeah. But
It's exactly that. Like the English language one is like 5 different languages just duct taped together, just in general. And like pretty much every rule is just a combination of, it's just like a bunch of rules that we have broken so many times that the broken rule actually became the rule.
all
Like,
the time. All the time.
like the reason in English that I don't have to worry about what gender a chair or a table
Oh God.
is because like people at some point in the history were like completely just screwing up like which article to use in front of the chair or the table, and they were like, it's just like screw this masculine feminine.
It's
it
English
was just
did get that right. I gotta say, I'm very happy about that. Like, I do not need to worry about if road is masculine but map is feminine. Absurd. So I'm glad we got that right on English at least.
Yeah. But like, it's just a combination of broken rules that became the standard because people kept on breaking that rule so much that the new rule was just created in people's heads. And it's like nobody was writing the stuff down. Like, I'm sure at the time there was probably someone that was really irritated by people not getting the gender correct of table and chair. Like, however, that person is dead, and like somebody who cares about me saying specifically, like they will eventually die and nobody is going to care about that like 100 years from now. So what's the point? Like, the only languages that stay like exactly as they were are the dead languages.
The dead ones. Yes. It's when you were talking about how people, because people still do this today, where like, oh, well, that's not what that word means. And even though everyone south of 24 is using it this way, well, I got news for you. That's what the word's going to mean pretty soon. So get used to it. That's language doesn't stay the same. One of my favorite examples of this that I always use is, I can't remember if it was Jonathan Swift or Alexander Pope. I think it was Jonathan Swift. And Jonathan Swift, English poet or writer, for those you don't know, he wrote this long letter just excoriating the fact that so many people were saying beloved and not beloved. It was driving him insane. He's like, it is not beloved, it's beloved, that the ED should be pronounced. And it's like a page. He was so fucking pissed about it. And and I'm sure he it grated him because that was wrong. But looking back on it now, a few hundred years later, it's like, buddy, what were you complaining about? This is insane. Like you're burning calories on this shit. And so it's funny when people do it today, because looking at it in the past, it just looks absurd, but they seem to be okay with it now.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's got like some pet peeves about something. Like for me, like at one time I wrote like this long Facebook like post like about people saying there is instead of there are, because it was ingrained into me as a kid. It is there is, like, or I even said it wrong. I even said it wrong myself. Like, but it was ingrained into me as a kid is there are, because it's like you use the plural like verb for like they, like Michael and Kelly are, they are, like he is, like she is.
Wait,
And
you
like
mean they is and they are, or there is? Because there is and there are makes sense to me. Both of those.
yeah, so it's like the grammatically correct version is there are, like are goes with the plural. So but like yeah, you can look it up. You can look it's
Wait, but I
from
mean, like, so like using the sentence. I think I'm confused. What you
oh,
mean?
saying like there are five oh wait. No, actually no, I screwed up myself. The other for like people saying like there is five instead of there are five.
Gotcha.
There
Okay.
we
All
go.
right. Cool. Okay. Gotcha. All right. I
Yeah,
see. Yeah.
yep. I screwed it up myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was
Yeah,
confused. Because like I can see like there is a hole in the bottom of the sea. Like it's not
that
there are
works.
a
That
hole. I
works.
was like, wait a minute. I was like, hold on. But okay, I see what you're saying now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had to. No, that was a good call because I was like, I was going off on a diatribe. I was like, wait a minute, did that actually make sense? What I said? But yeah,
Hold on, was that more off than I realized? Well, I had something like that too when I was in middle school. We had a kid named Brian, and he would always say, "We was doing this," and it drove me nuts. And I was like, "It's not we was, it's we were." I pointed out all the time, and it's like, if you're saying, you guys went to the store, it's not we was at the store, it's we were at the store. And he kept getting it wrong. And looking back, it's funny that it bothered me that much. It still kind of bothers me saying it because it's incorrect, but I'm just as guilty as everybody else because it's like you
yeah,
cancel.
yeah. No, exactly. And like people are gonna have pet peeves like
Yeah.
about stuff, like about the most ridiculous stuff. But it's like, do I let this pet peeve of mine like
Yes.
influence the opinion that I have about this person? Because like the issues that you have like about people who use like a certain phrase or a certain pronunciation of whatever word, like that says a lot more of what you think about the person or the people that like say
Yes.
things in that certain way than it actually does about that person's intelligence.
Hmm.
So like, even though when I hear somebody says there is five, it's like I'm like, okay, whatever. And I just keep on going right past that. But like you'll have people that will like stop and correct you or like go as far as to, upload a video criticizing the way
Oh
somebody's
God.
speaking. And it's like, dude, like you just have a problem with probably black people. You probably just have a
Well,
problem with black people. Let's just be real. Or you
yeah.
have a problem with young people, like the way some of these older folks are like criticizing Gen Z speak or internet speak, which is actually just black speak, but that's like a
Yeah.
whole other can of worms.
It's made like from what I've noticed, like it's either it's you're right, it's like a generational thing, a race thing, and more often than I say, that's a class thing. Because
Yeah.
like I said, you go to university, you learn from the ivory towers how you're supposed to talk. And when someone doesn't speak that way, your automatic assumption is, aha, they did not get the high class education I got, so they're beneath me. And those are most likely people who are lower social economic status or social or economic status. And so you can look down on them because they aren't speaking it the right way. It's a real insecurity thing because people, they have this special esoteric knowledge on how
Yeah.
King Alfred the First spoke English, and so now we're like, this is the right way. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. There's a linguistic term. It's well, I don't think it's a linguistic term, but there's a term for some of it because like a lot of grammar and spelling even comes from like snobbery. So there's I think it's like a script. I have to look up. I forget what the actual name of the term, but for example, like the word chaos is spelled chaos. The reason it's spelled ch instead of like ka or ca is because the ch is supposed to denote the origin of the word, which I think is Greek.
Probably Greek with
But
ch. I'm guessing. Yeah, I'd say.
yeah, so like the ch is supposed to indicate that it came from Greek, and like some learned scholar or whatever would know that and like know that words like that. Oh well, it's spelled such and such way because it's from Greek. It doesn't actually have any like it doesn't actually help anybody pronounce it better or anything like that. It's just for like some rich asshole to feel better about themselves for knowing how to spell it properly.
Yeah, they was very concerned with etymologists. He was like, okay, now listen, we can't just spell it with a K because then you won't know where the word came from. We can't have that. Like,
Like
that
it
will never
doesn't
do.
matter.
This is so you mentioned the CH, so this is it's not quite off topic, but you'll see why I'm saying it when I do. But so when I was a kid, one of my pet peeves, still to this day, I made a video about it on TikTok a couple years ago, and it was my how I don't like the letter C in the English language. I like since I was a kid, it's always bothered me that we have the letter C because the letter C does one of two things. It either makes a K sound or it makes an S sound, like K as in cat or S as in cell. Like that's what the C does. And we already have those letters. We already have
Yeah.
a K. We already have an S. We don't need a third letter that just does double duty. And so the only thing that the C actually is useful for is for words like, church, where you have the C and the H. And we could make CH its own letter. We could have we could have another letter for that. But the C just seems redundant to me, and it's always annoyed me that we hold on to it. But yeah, I just thought it reminded me of that, a pet peeve you were talking about, silly pet peeves when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah. It just goes back to like English being like a language that's got other languages duct taped to it. Cause like there was a different script when English was a different language. And then they like shoehorned the Roman alphabet on top of it. And then like we did have other letters to represent other sounds, but like they disappeared like as time went on. And then like there was a chance where everything could have been more normalized and streamlined as far as the spelling goes. But then the printing press happened, and you had all of these like aristocratic assholes like, okay, well, this is how things are spelled, and now they're all going to be spelled properly. Like, and it doesn't serve anyone except for like some rich, learned asshole. Like, but like grammar is this thing that we all get taught, now like as children, and we want to hold on to like that thing that some English teacher ridiculed us
Yep.
for
Yep.
like 30 years ago.
It's trauma that dating back decades. Thanks for joining in, Jacob. If you're still around, appreciate you stopping by. So what's interesting, you were talking about how we have different influences from different letters or different. Oh wait, you got something for you. EK, I just subscribed to your channel. Look at that. Duct tape. What was your duct tape comment? Oh, about how English is a bunch of language duct taped together.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Yeah, I appreciate the sub.
So one example I point to a lot with that very same thing is a lot of people. I don't know. I ran across this a lot because I went to a private school and a private college. So I ran across a lot of guys who were really into Latin, which is a red flag. Honestly, if someone's too much into Latin, it's kind of weird. Over time, back then it wasn't like that, but over time it's kind of gotten that way. That's you're definitely suspicious. But a lot of guys seem to think that English is a Latin descended language. Like a shocking amount of people think that it is not. For those of you wondering, it is not. English is a Germanic language. Yeah. Now, it does have a lot of Latin influences. So like words like, I don't know, like illuminate, I think is a Latin-based word or something like that. But one of the main reasons we have so much Latin influence is because of French. There's a giant French influence in English from William the Conqueror, who was the King of England in 1066. Yeah. And he didn't speak any English at all. He only spoke French. So the aristocracy of England for like hundreds of years, their primary language was French. And you can see this in the difference between the names of animals and the names of foods. So the peasants would raise cows, but the nobles would eat beef. Cow is an English word, beef is the French word. And they would raise calves, they'd eat veal, they'd raise sheep, they'd serve mutton, they raise chickens, but serve poultry. And so we get all these French words jammed into there. And that's where we get the Latin influence, which has always been fascinating to me. And my favorite, though, is the word cherries. Because, do you know this one about cherries?
No, I don't know this one.
The cherries one is interesting. So cherries is not an English word. It's a French word. But in French, the word cherries refers to a single cherry. And in English, S usually, connotates or denotes a plural. So we would say, oh, you're eating a bowl of cherries. What do you call a single cherry then? Well, they just dropped the S. So like so cherries actually only means one cherry, but we just dropped the S to make it easier for us to speak it in English. That's my favorite one because it's an adaptation that I would have thought of too. It's like, okay, it's already got an S in there. That's a plural now. And so it's just funny to see how it evolves over time with the influence of other languages.
Yeah, yeah. There's actually so like Latin enters the English language in two times actually. So there's
Oh,
a
what's
whole
that?
thing with like the French taking over
Mhm.
England and like a lot of like French stuff making its way into English. But then it happens a second time, much later on,
Oh,
like, and it's purely a bunch of aristocrats thinking that they're better than everybody else. Because you have these people that I forget that I meant to make a video about this a while ago, and like I even wrote it and scripted it and everything, and just like forgot to record it. But you have like there are like two people that are accredited with the rule of like not ending a sentence in a
oh
preposition.
my God. I was going to bring that up too. Holy
Yeah,
shit. Holy
yeah.
shit.
And like and this is the reason because these guys and like a bunch of other like scholars
Some
and
fucking nerd
aristocrats
at
and
like
famous rich
Cambridge or something.
assholes,
Yeah.
yeah, so like they all really liked Latin, so like they just inserted like a bunch of like different Latin words into English. And like one of the things that you cannot do in Latin is end a sentence in a preposition. Like it's the same in every single derivative of Latin. Like in Spanish, if you want to say like I can say that's the spot that or well, that's the spot you can park your car in. So like in Spanish, like you have to say esto es el espacio en el que like puedes estacionar. Like that is a spot in which you can park instead of like if you say esto es el espacio donde puedes estacionar like yeah, donde puedes estacionar tu coche in, like that's incorrect. So that came from these people trying to make English more like Latin. There are a few rules and a bunch of new words that enter the English language because, and this is like I think it's like the 1800s ish is when this happened. Like I have to relook it up again, but
No, I
like
saw her too. 1800s. Yeah.
yeah, but it was specifically because you just had a bunch of people that really, really liked Latin and wanted to make English more like Latin. So we got a few extra rules and we like got a bunch of extra words, like just so these people could feel better about themselves.
Yo, man, I've never heard anyone else mention this story because it's one of my favorite ones about the Latin thing too. I mean, I didn't know the examples like because I can't speak Spanish or French or anything or Italian or Romanian or whatever Latin languages, but is that because we all learned this. We all learned this as a kid. Hey, do not end your sentence in a preposition. That is wrong. And you're like, okay, because people do it all the time, and even saying it that way, like the way you said it, is like someone says, "Hey, there's a spot to park your car in," but someone saying that is a place in which you can park your car. I was like, "Ooh, this person's smart. Look how smart that person is." They
Right.
said "in
Yeah.
which," and it sounds smarter, but it's bullshit. It's completely made up
Yeah.
because they wanted English to sound like Latin when it's not a Latin language at all. And
Yeah.
I wish I could speak those languages because I heard that if you end a Latin language in a preposition, a sentence, the whole sentence falls apart. It doesn't make any sense at all, and that doesn't apply to us. So why are we holding on to it?
Yeah, yeah. It's like it doesn't apply to us because for hundreds of years, people were ending sentences and prepositions in whatever version of English they were speaking. And currently, people are still ending sentences in
All the time.
prepositions because English is just a language where that can happen. Like, but these people were like, no, you should not do this, even though there's a long history of people doing it. And like that stuff drives me crazy. That's the prescriptivism is what it's called. So like there are two different like studies of linguistics. Pretty much everybody, I think it's like 90% of people that study linguistics study descriptive linguistics, which is just how people are using the language. Like they don't care they don't care how people pronounce certain words. They don't care about like the grammar that people actually do care about the grammar. Like when the grammar differs, they're like, oh, okay, where is this happening? How did this happen? Like because you're using it this way, but like they care about it because people are using it in that particular way. And then you have the prescriptive people, which are like, this is how this needs to be said. This is how you're supposed to say it. Like, so, and there's like a huge fight. And like, there's a lot of like privilege that goes with like the whole prescriptivist thing, because it's like, how are you going to tell people like they should say something in a certain way when somebody had to make up that specific way from nothing in the first place? Like, you have to describe it before you can prescribe it.
I'm kind of my brain's kind of rattled that there are prescriptive linguists. How does that even work? That doesn't make any sense to me. I couldn't imagine a way to study language other than in a descriptive fashion, because, like you said, what is your authority to say how this? Now, I can think of some examples, maybe, but the way I say, like, to your name, like, what's good English? My definition of what good English is English in which your audience understands what you're saying. That's what it is. Like, if your audience doesn't understand you, okay, it's no longer good English, or at least it's not good for communication. So someone could come up to you and speak like Donald Trump speaks at a 4th grade level. But for the most part, you get what he's saying. You know, like you might say, oh, well, look at this guy. But, 90% of the conversation, no matter how weird and meandering it is, you have a general idea of where he's going. Now, if he got up there and started saying, X7Q tree house cloud plane, okay, that's bad English because it doesn't make any sense at all, So that's the only like prescriptive element I could possibly say to like what a good language is. But I don't know how else anyone. I'm surprised it's 10%. Yeah, I think it'd be nobody.
Yeah, there's like certain ways where like I can see use. For example, like if I said like, okay, so like in like we say the big red house, right?
Oh boy.
Like, yeah, so like the order of adjectives. So like if I said the red big house, you would probably still understand, but like your brain would be like,
weird.
Hold up, what? Yeah. So like in that case, I would stop somebody and be like, hey, look, like it's the big red house. Like we don't say it that way. Like there's like a certain order. Like I would hit you with that. Like, however, like I mean, every single grammatical rule is subject to change.
Yes.
Like there's like if you get enough people saying the red big house in a certain area, like eventually that just becomes like a rule, and it's just like you can say it like both ways or whatever. But like there's a case for it. Also, like the example you gave, like where like you're trying to make something that is like the most understandable to whoever your audience is. Like, for example, like, I mean, textbook English or written English. Written English is different than spoken English. Like, people will say spoken English is a lot more informal. Like, also, like, just being able to edit yourself, like writing something down, you're like, no, hold on, I want to say that. And like hitting that backspace button and like typing something else, like that is going to make your written English like very different than your spoken English, because you're just coming right, off the top of your head with whatever you're saying when like we're in a conversation and everything. So like in those cases, like, there's like certain standards that you can try to prescribe and go by, but like just because like you're trying to hit one specific standard doesn't mean that like that should be the standard for everything. Like I'm going to accept a lot more from a comment that I get on TikTok than I am from some academic paper that I'm trying to read, because
yeah. If you're reading over a court proceeding or something, or a summons or whatever, or a bill, you're going to expect a certain quality in there. That's true. That's very true. Oh God, what did you say? I lost it. Language in the order that it's in. God, I have something to add to that. It's gone. That's too bad, because it was really good. Trust me, folks. It was good. Oh, I remember now. So about how spoken English is different than written English. And this is why people, like, you ever watching a movie from like, that's based in the 1700s or in the Civil War era or something.
Yeah.
And everyone is talking like this, my darling. I submit to you that the Sturm and Drang of my enemies and the trials and tribulations, like, because I think people talk that way back then. It's like, no, they didn't, because writing something on a piece of paper was a big deal.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
it wasn't just, they weren't writing like scratching out like a shopping list, whenever they wrote for like important reasons. So the language that they used was, of equally high level. And so when we're reading back on how people, letters that, congressmen wrote to generals out during the Civil War, we're like, oh, well, I guess everyone talked that way. No, they talked like a much lower level.
Yeah,
People were
exactly,
not doing
exactly.
that.
Yeah, I mean, you can even go back like 50 years ago. I mean, like when video cameras were much less prevalent, when somebody put a video camera on you, like you was turning it all the way up.
Yep.
Like yeah,
It's,
that's the one thing about like, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, like all of this stuff where people are just like, in their bedroom and they're sharing a hot take, like, all right, I gotta tell y'all about this right now. Like that is like the closest that we have to like unfiltered, this is
yeah.
how people actually talk that
Yeah.
like we've ever had in history.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. It's like how things become, more and more casual with the availability. And you can actually see that this is true whenever you look at writing. Like, so you have like writings to like, men on the battlefield, to their wives back home. This might be the last letter they ever write. Like you said, they're turning the dial to 11 on this shit. They become, Samuel Taylor Coleridge out there. They're just like making sure this is good. But whenever you see like writings from aristocrats or something, even like in the set, like for example, Mozart. Mozart, there's a letter that someone found that Mozart wrote to his sister while he was, traveling on tour through Europe and everything. And if you read the letter, it's like 3, 4 paragraphs long. It's nothing but like fart and shit jokes. It's like, yeah, they weren't all like super high class people. Mozart was like 24. He was like, oh hey sis, what's up? And then a bunch of fart and shit jokes. And so yeah, that's just people have not changed. We've always been this way.
Yeah, yeah. Like it's really good. It's like people just need to accept that, man. Like people just need to accept like the whole person, just like stop getting
Stop.
like so
Stop. It's
yeah.
sad. And you know what? I will say, I think that our generation we're a lot better at it than the generation before us. Because us growing up, adults would always like they love shitting on kids. They just love doing it. They just love talking about how dumb kids were. For a long time, millennial didn't necessarily mean someone born between 1981 and 1997. It meant stupid kid. Like that's what millennial actually meant for the longest time. And to the extent that a lot of Gen Zers were called millennials until recently, because that's what they thought millennial meant, just a young person. And we, at least from what I've seen, we aren't like dunking on Gen Z as much as like Gen X dunked on us. We're certainly not boomers. And so I like to think that we're growing past that and we can just have, an alliance of just human beings and not, oh, you're a 19-year-old who's acting like a 19-year-old. I'm going to make fun of you for that, which is just, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I think too, like at least for me and like some of my peers, whatever. Like there's a lot of admiration for Gen Z as
Oh,
far
tons.
as
Yeah.
yeah, like them sharing their takes, their like them not putting up with shit that
Yeah.
we put up with, like they're like uh, wanting to have like everything just like immediately, like no, change this shit like right now. This is bullshit. Like change this right now. We're not gonna be like you and just like eventually take it. Like so, like I really appreciate that. I really admire that aesthetic. Like it's something that like, I wish we were more vocal about. I think also like social media really helped like
Oh,
that
tons.
come together for them in a way that like we didn't have anything like that. Like our
Mhm.
social media like was just whoever you was hanging out with, throughout the week. Like you really have like an entire like global audience in some cases, like when you're talking about whatever issue that is currently affecting you, or at least a national audience for talking about things that are happening like right there, right then in your life on a national level that are affecting you, and like trying to like mobilize a group of people to help change some stuff.
And they're so smart. They're just so smart. That's what I so many times I'll one of the best parts, I say this all the time, but one of my favorite parts about being a content creator is the fact that I get to meet so many interesting people who are also content creators. I feel bad for people who aren't because there's so many content creators that I follow and that I enjoy. And then I get this huge like burst of excitement. Like, oh my God, they're following me too. And so I try to talk to them. It's the best feeling in the world. And I get to interact with these people whom I admire and respect. And a lot of times I'll try to set up interviews or, guest appearances and everything. And I'll say, hey, would you be able to come on the show or the podcast or whatever on this day? And I'll get a message back saying, hey, I'd really love to, but got midterms coming up or got finals. I'm like, oh my God, that's right. They're babies.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It's just, and I look up to them so much. And like, they're light years ahead of where I was at 20 years old. I mean, it's just, no comparison at all. And so that's what I respect the most is that they've actually put in the work and I'm all here for it.
Yeah, that you are absolutely right there. Like, I mean, I remember me at 20 years old, like thinking I was like a leftist or whatever. It's like I didn't know shit. I didn't know a damn thing.
It's embarrassing, like how far ahead they are. But I mean, we can't be too hard on ourselves though, because we didn't have the tools they had. It's like the internet was just coming out, and everything. I was still using like Microsoft Encarta, and in college.
Yep.
So, we were just kind of getting used to that shit. But I am glad to see that we're breaking this like a generational spat thing. I remember years ago, I went to I was still in the Army at the time, and I went to like present in favor of some legislation at the Indiana State Assembly. And I was waiting for my turn to come up there, and and there was this guy who was like the doorman for the Congress, and I think he had something on, like a vest or something that signified that he was a veteran, maybe a hat or whatever. And I walked up to him, was like, hey, what's he saw me because I was in my dress blues. Oh, that's probably what he saw me in a dress. He goes, oh, hey, he's like, how long you been in the Army, so on and so forth. And he was like 85 years old, 84, 85 years old,
wow.
And he was a World War II veteran. And I was like, oh, okay. So he was telling me all about it and everything. And we're like the only two black guys there. It's Indiana. So of course we were talking and everything. And so, but I asked him about, what it was like and everything back then, soldiers and their stories and everything. And then he said, but you know what the best part about it was? I said, what? He goes, all those World War I vets. He said they came back and they always said, you kids could never do this. You guys are too soft. You're too weak. You couldn't possibly handle it. And we finally had our own. We're like, I guess we can do it, can't we, old man? I was like, wow, man, this is just, we got to stop this. This shit has got to be put to a stop. We can't keep, pretending that because we happen to be born at this time, we're better than people born 20, 30 years later. It was pretty funny to hear that. It was really funny to hear that from an 80-year-old that he was taking that shit, 60 years ago.
I love that. I love that so much. Cause like, it's absolutely true. Like, like if you take 20-year-old me and you put them next to like one of these 20-year-old Gen Zers, like just about any topic, I will get eviscerated.
Yeah, well, we would have them beat in the communication department. That's our only one, like you're talking about. We'd have them beat there. That'd be it. That would be it.
I can hold a conversation.
Yes, how about that? I can pick up a phone and order a pizza. You try that sometime. The phone is like that is their kryptonite. And honestly, it's kind of mine too. It's kind of got to the point where it's not that I'm not scared to be on the phone because a lot of them really are, but I don't want to be on the phone. Like I don't want to.
I agree.
Yeah. And phone calls have gotten oddly intrusive, like over the years, because if this was, 2004 and someone called me, I pick up the phone. I answer. Hell, if it's 1994, I don't even know who's on the other side of that phone. I just answer it. But man, these days, you want to call me? You want me to just drop everything and talk to you? Get the fuck out of here. No, set that up. Let me know, and then we can have a conversation. So that's pretty funny how the phone has gotten like very weird for folks.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, man. I remember like I I had my mom gave me a separate line in my room for the internet.
Yeah,
And like,
because you needed that back then. But just so you guys
yeah,
know,
yeah,
because you needed that.
yeah. And most of the time, like 95% of the time when that phone like went off, it was just my mother calling me to tell me to do something.
Oh, trauma.
It's like,
It's great.
go take the trash out. Did you leave this in the stove?
Damn. Little
Yeah,
did you know that you walked into a trap with that one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And
They,
like, if she would call me back to back, like she would call me, and then like literally like 2 minutes later, after we just got done talking, she would call me again about something. I remember once I picked up the phone and I was like, "Hello," thinking it was her, and like it was like some telemarketer asking me to do a survey, and I was like, "Oh, okay, never mind." I was like, "Yeah, yeah, do your survey, sure." What are we
Sorry,
talking
thought you
about?
were my
Pizza?
mom. Sorry, oh, it's oh shit. The another one like that is I remember having to call the airline to look for a plane ticket. Like before the internet existed, it was I wasn't old enough to actually buy a ticket at the time, but the family, like, we were gonna go travel somewhere. So dad told me, hey, call the airline and find out. So yeah, that's how you got plane tickets back in the day. You called the airport and said, hey, I want to leave on August 21st and I want to come back on, August 29th. I'm flying from St. Louis to San Diego. What do you have available? And they would list off all the planes, and you would have like incredibly tedious. Like,
Yeah,
and when you travel to the airport, like say you went to pick somebody up, if their flight was delayed, you wouldn't know. Like you wouldn't know until you got to the airport and you
yeah,
saw the thing. Oh, this flight's delayed by 3 hours. Like, oh, okay, because no one's texting you when they take off. They don't text you when they land. If you're driving in a convoy and you lose somebody, you don't know where they went. Like it's amazing we survived it all through all this stuff.
yeah, yeah. That's true. Like, and like you could just go straight to the terminal. Like
Oh
you
yeah,
could hug
oh man.
everybody goodbye and then watch them get on the plane and be right there when they got off of the plane.
Oh, I was gonna just caption what's going on here. This is this is what the episode should have been called. but
Pretty much.
pretty much, yeah, pretty much. So I was going to ask you also, what got you into politics specifically? Like, at what point did you like make not necessarily a pivot from language to politics, but when did you? Or actually, no, what actually got you into it? Because you mentioned that the Black English is like a political, like talking about it is a political statement whether you want it or not, but like what about other areas, like how did that first affect you?
Yeah, so like I've pretty much always been like ideologically left, like more left than my like parents were, and like I remember being like in college, like reading the Communist Manifesto and like trying to find Mao's Red Book. I remember specifically I was in a Borders. Like, was it a Borders? Yeah, it was a Borders, like which doesn't exist anymore. And like I was trying to ask like the attendant, like, yeah, like like the red book that like Chairman Mao was giving out to like that was I would have hated me back
Yeah.
then. But like yeah, I had always been like, like that, like for a while. So like and I had like all of the like I had like all of those beliefs and everything, and just, but like didn't really have anything to do with it, like other than just like random conversations with like friends of mine or that I would interact with or whatever. I remember getting into some heated debate with a friend of mine when I was when I was at a pool hall like in college, and like the guy that was controlling the PA system just kept on turning the music up louder and louder as
That's funny. That's funny.
I,
That's funny.
yeah, I think I was trying to like explain like some like like communism thing. Like, and the dude was like, well, no, if I'm a doctor, I should be able to make so much more money. And I'm arguing with this. So like, yeah, it's always been there. As far as like making that content, like it came from just a lot of different clapback videos that I was making to like random comments like that were just racist. Like responding
Yeah.
to racism was like, okay, well, let's talk about, you know, this particular aspect. Like, yeah, this racist thing happened in the past, like because this, and this. And then it was like, okay, when that also happened to like coincide with this political thing that happened, which sort of kind of like dragged me into that. Also, there's like another creator, like that makes sense to me, is his at, and like he had like a bunch of us do this thing called community book report where we would like read a book and just like kind of like just do a book report like on a chapter of it or whatever. And the first book that we did was The Sum of Us. And it was just like really cool to make that video. I think the chapter I chose was like why we don't have socialized medicine. It's because of like racism and Red Scare policies. Is basically like, oh, like you're gonna have to give, you know, medical aid to, or you're gonna have to, or what, black people are gonna benefit like from having like that, like socialized medicine or single payer like healthcare. You don't want to have all these black people show up in your hospital for this, that, whatever, you know, like same thing with the education system and all that. But basically, like that got me into branching out more and talking about more of those topics, like because like I kind of got dragged into it, and it was like, oh, okay, well, this is like fun to talk about as well. Like I can info dump all types of stuff with you, and I have like all of these receipts, you know, that I've been stacking up over the years. So like to where now it's become like more of my focus now as far as content that I'm making, like over language stuff in general. So that's basically how it happened. Just getting dragged into stupid clapback videos that I shouldn't have had to be dragged into.
Did you run across? Before I go with this question, I want to talk about what you mentioned actually 30 minutes ago, where you talked about how you uploaded a video on TikTok and it got 700 views really quickly, and how it started going off and everything. I remember someone talking to me like a long time ago on my channel. They said that hey, you have really good content. I can't believe you only have 8,000 followers. And I said, what do you mean only 8,000? It's 8,000 people. Are you kidding? I was like, people, if 8,000 people came up to you in your everyday life and said, hey, I like what you have to say, I want to hear more of that, your head, you couldn't fit through the door. So it's weird hearing stuff like that, but how quickly people can access your stuff. But there that comes with a price, because you mentioned like the horrible, like the racism. I gotta tell you, I was surprised how much racism I ran across on TikTok. I was not expecting it to be. Now, I knew, I'm not naive. I know racists exist and everything, but I thought TikTok would be a much more chill, like much more young platform where I wouldn't see that much of it. But man, it's a lot. It's wild how much there is.
It's like social media and like all of the platforms like have their own just like different like levels of racist quirks and stuff that you have to deal with. Like it's it's weird. So like TikTok is really good at discoverability, and you can build like a nice little community like of like followers and stuff like that for yourself. Like you'll get unhinged comments because the algorithm is like pushing your stuff out to like people that just aren't going to be part of your audience, or like, or maybe just like hate watching you to just like fuck with you. Like, but then like some of the most unhinged stuff that I get comes from YouTube. Like,
oh God, yeah. Whew. I don't even read YouTube comments. I don't read them. I do not read them at all. So yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, I didn't expect it to be like as crazy. I think like the second or third video that I made got like some stupid unhinged comment from like, or on TikTok, like got some random unhinged comment that like I did a clap back to, because I was just like, what, how could you possibly comment this? And then I just saw like just tons of other people doing it as I started engaging with the platform more. Because like originally I was just like, oh yeah, TikTok is just this thing I'm gonna do to try to grow my YouTube channel. And then like unfortunately, I think for myself, I fell like more into making more TikTok content than I did YouTube content. Uh, but yeah, they all have their quirks as far as like how it is to exist as a black creator. Like especially when you're not just trying to do comedy, like or pander to a white audience.
Yeah, yeah. It's difficult. The racism is bad. The sexism is worse. I will say
Yeah,
the racism is bad, but
yes,
uh, I I have respect for anybody who makes content, but I have a huge amount of respect for any women who make content because yeah, I think the sexism is a lot worse than the racism. The but it's frustrating either way because I don't know, you get a lot of like strikes against your content or whatever. I used to get a whole lot of them. They're a lot better now. I've only gotten a couple in the past few months, but I used to get them all the time. And they changed some stuff up. I remember like last fall, but it's annoying whenever I'll get a content strike. But then I'll see a comment, from Long Knives 1488, Eagles Nest, and
oh,
it's like, and this guy is commenting like, "Oh, more basketball American activities." Like, okay, how come this guy has an active account at all when I say, "Hey, fascism is bad," and it gets a contest, right? That's really like. I don't want to end up like conservatives, like, "Oh, they're shadow banning." I'm never gonna do something like that. But I do get annoyed when there's people who are objectively worse than anything I've ever said, who are right as rain, just making content all over the place.
yeah. So this is weird. I'm probably gonna jinx myself,
Oh,
but
here we
like
go. Here we go.
for some reason, I have never gotten a content strike.
Holy shit! Really?
Yeah, I do not know how or
That's
why.
incredible.
Like, yeah, it's like I have like I've had yeah, I've never gotten I've gotten community guidelines violations on like random comments. Like I think I commented you on some post like EWW on something that was like actually disgusting. Like I think it was like whatever, and like that got a community guidelines violation. Like I got a community guidelines violation once for commenting the peach emoji on something. Um, on something that definitely deserved that emoji, whatever. Like, yeah, I've
That's
never
great.
gotten a community guidelines violation on any video that I've made.
Oh, that's
I don't know
amazing.
why. I think maybe it's because I started out with just like general like linguistic stuff and like I was not dabbling in anything else that maybe the audience that sees my stuff doesn't I have no idea. I have had a couple people tell me that when they followed me they got like some sort of message about my page, but like I've never gotten a content strike on TikTok. I don't know how. I feel guilty.
No, no, that's great. No, that's incredible. I'm actually really stunned to hear that. Although the peach thing was pretty funny. Yeah, I can see that one. I don't know. That's pretty funny. The ew is weird. That's odd. I've so okay. I'll ask you. So this is perfect. So one thing that I complain about a lot is it's none of my business, but I don't know. It just bothers me. But I don't use censor words on TikTok. So if I'm talking about, World War II and like the Imperial Japanese expansion, I'm not gonna say the grape of Nanking. I'm not going to say that. It's the rape of Nanking. And so
Yeah.
like people use words like grape or essay or pew pew or unalived is a big one. I don't do that shit. I just don't. And I know a lot of people say that they do it because they are trying to get around the censors and everything. In my experience, I have not noticed any difference between videos in which, that I say those words all the time and I don't get them like shut down. Now, there are things that do get shut down for me.
Yeah.
So if I ever talk about the KKK on TikTok, they don't like that at all. They like
No, they
there's
don't.
something about me making videos about them generally, and I compare them to Republicans when I show that their party platforms are exactly the same word for word. TikTok hates that, and so I know, right? And it really pisses me off because it's something that people need to talk about a lot more. There's no difference between the platforms. Like they're not similar platforms; they are the same platforms, and I can't get that message out. The word Nazi, people will say Yahtzees and stuff. Like I'm not
Yeah.
going to do that either. And I don't know if you do that or not, or have you noticed anything like that or what?
Yeah, I do it sometimes. It
Mhm,
it really depends on the video because like
mhm.
some videos, I think it is important to say they murdered such and such. They
Yeah.
like and like it. I really haven't seen that much of a difference though in my content. Like I think it's just the algorithm just playing with people, honestly, because I mean, TikTok has like some sort of like dopamine drip that it lets out to like different creators where like you have
It does.
no
It does.
control over what's going to go viral and what's not. So I think people like because I'll upload like 10 videos and like maybe one of them will get like over 50K views and most of them will be like below 15K. Hell, most of them will be like in like the 2 to 5K range.
Mhm.
And like it doesn't matter. Like I can like talk about like Nazis doing Nazi shit, or I can talk about like some just pure language stuff, and like nothing will happen. And I think maybe people like who generally deal with like those more political topics think they have to censor whatever more, but I think it's just the algorithm doing like bullshit algorithm shit to try to get you to make more stuff. It's like, okay, I'm not going to say rape anymore. I'm
Yeah.
going to start saying grape, and we'll see if that does anything. And you happen to say grape in a video,
And
that got. That's what I think it is,
yeah,
honestly.
I think so too. I think so too. And because there's two things about that. The first is it's 100% true. TikTok does do this weird thing with how often they feed your content out. And because so when I first started making videos, like I make videos all over the map. I'll do politics stuff, I'll do comedy, I'll do stuff about poetry. It's just all random stuff. And I've been doing this 2 years now. I've gotten very good at figuring out what formula works for a solid video, like what works. And you're not always right. Sometimes you think, oh, this is really good and it does okay. And then more often than not, you'll do a video you think is average and it explodes. That pisses me off. Like I hate that. I hate that, man. I can't stand when that happens because you put like people don't realize that it takes like an hour to make a 90-second video. Like people, right?
Yes,
It's weird
yes.
how long it takes to do it, but then sometimes like a couple weeks ago there was this video of this it was a party Donald Trump held after the New Hampshire primary, and because he won, and he had a campaign staffer there who took a picture with his trial lawyer Alina Habba and uploaded it to his Twitter. No big deal, right? But it
Oh
turns
yeah,
out
I know the story.
you know the story? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So for those of you who hadn't heard it, that was a big deal because the day before she had told the
Yeah,
judge that
she
her
said
family
she
had
was exposed to COVID.
COVID, and so she couldn't go. And then there the next day, she's in a different state having a party and stuff. So they kicked this guy out. And so I was just doing a video making fun of him. I had like 250,000 views. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like this garbage, this goofy ass story exploded. And I have like these really good ones. But it's true. It is kind of random that like because I know like something like this is a really good video, and then TikTok's like, no, we're not doing that, and then out of nowhere they just bolster your stuff, and it is kind of obnoxious, but
Yeah.
and it'll cause people to like chase these red herrings, and I like exactly what you said that sometimes the topic deserves to be addressed as what it is. If there's somebody someone who's guilty of sexually assaulting children at a church or something, I am not going to look into a camera and say that these children were raped. No, they were raped, and it's important to say that because
Yeah.
that's what fucking happened. I'm not gonna dial this down because in fact I'd rather not make the video honestly than
Yeah.
I'd rather
Yeah.
not do it if I had to go down that road. But what I did want to ask is like, so since you've been doing like the political stuff in the conversation, are you in any way optimistic or pessimistic in what American politics is going to look like? Let's say in the near future. Like we can all be optimistic about the distant future, but the next 10 years, like the next 5 or 10 years, what are your thoughts on where we're headed here? Because honestly, it's hard for me to say we are on a precipice here, and it's I'm not going to be like the goofy folks are like, this is the most important election of our, like they say every 2 years, which is just was always driven me crazy. But
Yeah.
we always talk about, we're going to go down socialism or barbarism. That's the choices we have in front of us in the near future. If you had to bet money on it, which one would you go with?
Oh, I mean, if I had to bet money on it, I'd probably say it's gonna be pretty much like it is now. Like I mean, okay, so I took a ton of heat for saying I wasn't gonna vote for Biden, like, which wasn't that I was gonna vote for Trump or I was endorsing Trump or I was telling anybody how to vote in general. Like, it's just like, no, I can't do it. There's a red line that I will not cross, and that dude, like, whatever. Like, that's like what it is. But then you have like all the blue MAGA people out there yelling 4 more years to people that are like, hey, stop killing these kids. I'm tired of opening up Instagram and seeing children like missing half of a face. Like, please make it stop.
Mm-hmm.
Like, which is like, okay, that's pretty shitty. And then like you have the people where it's like, oh, it's okay when we do it, but it's not okay when they do it, like that. Like, this whole thing, I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
But to pretend like it hasn't been like that for like the past, for as long as I've been alive would be, like not doing like what would just be erasing so much history. Like, and then we have the Trump side where like that man is just really charismatic. He is really good.
Buckets of riz,
talking
man.
To a specific type of person. Like it, I mean, the workers love him, even though he will. Well, not the a lot of working class loves him, even though he will totally make things way worse for them and has no interest in supporting them. Like, they just like the guy because he's not like what we have like thought of as a politician, even though he's totally a politician.
Oh yeah.
You can say he's an
he's a good one. That's he's a good one. Yeah.
You can say he's an anti-establishment politician, but he's still a politician. Like, he just doesn't. He's just not the same as what has been, carted out there for years and years and years. And like, he's preying upon, like, I guess everybody's preying upon fear. There's nothing but fear. It's fear from both sides. Like, we got the Republicans talking about like all the immigrants are coming in doing all this crazy stuff, even though they're just trickling in and they're asking for asylum and they should be allowed to have asylum. Like, if this country went to shit, you would probably want to be able to go to Canada or Mexico or hop on a plane somewhere and be like, asylum, help me out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, anyway, and then we've got on our side, oh, they're going to take away like this, and this, and like nothing's functioning. Like, even it's like, I don't know, like, and I think like in like the next 10 years, it's still going to be this dysfunctional thing. Like, until people actually, no, I do see a few threads of hope. Like, the UAW strike is
that was great.
huge.
That was great.
Yeah, especially in the fact that like it's showing people is like, all right, screw this political like bullshit. Like, there's nobody that we're going to elect that is going to give us what we need. We got to go out there and we got to get this shit for ourselves. Like, so like, yeah, that's excellent. I think maybe we'll see more of that. Hope to see a lot more of that. A lot more people just saying, all right, screw this. Let's go get, our wages. Let's do stuff more on the level of a community, like of who's around me, more on a state level. I was talking about this, or I was commenting about this yesterday. Somebody left me a comment saying, when I pointed out like what the minimum wage was in 1988, they're like, oh, well, like, that's just like, you can't just say that because it's not taking into account like the inflation that's happening in other states. So like, I actually did a little bit of research. I was like, okay, well, let's look at California. California adhered to the closely adhered to the federal minimum wage until around 2009. Even when they were paying more, they were paying like $1 more. Like they didn't start getting like much higher until after 2009, and then it started to go a little bit more like this. Same thing in New York until around, I think it was like 2012 or something like that. They paid like a little bit more, maybe like $1.50 more, but then like it started to stretch more, and they passed the law. I think it was like 2015, where it was like, okay, it depends on where you live. So like if you work in New York, like then you can end up getting like $16 an hour or something like that instead of the $7.25. If you like live in like Staten Island, and like it maxes at like 13 or something, whatever. Like in Seattle, like you also had us adhering to the minimum or to the federal minimum for like a long time until around like 2012. Like, and the things that made that wage get kicked up a lot higher, you know, wasn't the federal government. It was a lot of the political action that was happening in those states. It was the fight for 15, where you had that in California, you had that over here in Washington, you had that in New York. You had workers just getting up together and saying, hey, look, we ain't going to take it no more. So I think with people seeing more labor movements and stuff like that, that it does actually have a potential to do good in the more immediate future. Like, because it's nothing's going to happen on the federal level. I don't really, there's too much dysfunction there right now. There's too much infighting there right now for anything like that. But I do see like hopefully more people coming together, because you even see it now thanks to the success of UAW. Some of these states that have historically paid like just garbage wages, bottom basement wages, like are now having to possibly deal with unions, like where they didn't have to deal with unions before. You know, you see like the Hyundai factory, the Honda factory, all these places, like you see people in Georgia and where are the other places that they do the auto manufacturing, whatever. You see all these different places like getting a lot more people looking at that UAW thing going, all right, we need to do this shit. They're not paying us enough money. And those people got some decent wages. So I do see some of that, and maybe like that will like end up getting like adopted by like hopefully like some more Democrats who are running for office. It's some of that stuff. Like I don't have a socialist party to vote for. I don't have a Labor Party to vote for. I have a Republican Party and a super extra Republican Party. Like that's it. The two options. So it's like the only thing I can see, like, I mean, and the third party candidates, they don't run people in every state like they should. Like I think like if the Green Party or like some socialist or whatever, some further left party was to start running people in just like regular states, which would shave votes off of the Democratic Party, might also force them to go more left to actually do more things to benefit, you know, the people that live in those states. That would like help people out in general. I mean, we went from a president that was talking about a job guarantee, like for everybody, so that they could have a base standard of living, like to like presidents like talking about like whether or not, like hell, we can use Biden as an example too. President Biden breaking the railroad strike a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he was on the picket line for the UAW strike, but really like that was a small scale strike. Like people look at, you know, those UAW jobs as, oh, that's skilled labor. They're supposed to have unions. They're supposed to like, you know, they're supposed to like be able to demand better wages. And like if you cause Ford, GM, and Stellantis to break down, that doesn't necessarily affect all of America like immediately, and just like there's not an immediate like effect on the economy where people really feel it. It's like, oh, if you were going to buy a new car or you needed a certain car part, like you would probably feel that, but not in the same way as the railroad strike, like affecting what you had like in your grocery store, like, or in other places across the country. And then Americans rallying like behind the striking railroad workers in solidarity because they want them to get paid more. That would have been the strike to get out on the picket lines with and show that the president was behind those people. but he broke that strike. Like,
Yeah,
and those people
wow.
got like
That's
two PTO days, and we still have one person looking at like, a mile, 2-3 miles of train, like to inspect it. Like the safety inspector is looking at like 3 miles of train, just one person. Like, come on. And you're still having, train derailments every single week. You're still have this completely unsafe monopoly that is going around, and the president sided with capital. So the only way I see this changing is we have to like get the grassroots ground people just like in the communities doing stuff. And I do see stuff like that happening. Like, but like politically with the federal government, it's gonna be a shit show probably for the next 10 years.
so yeah, I so much that I agree completely. All this kind of is interwoven together with the strikes you were mentioning. Everything. I think the UAW and the UPS strikes were some of the two of the brighter moments that I've witnessed over the past year because it was funny hearing people that were actually mad about the strikes because they would say stuff. Hey, they wanted a what did they want? They wanted a 40% raise over 10 years or something like that. And people said, well, it's ridiculous, or 20% over 10 year, whatever. And it's like, okay, well, we just want the same raise that the executives got. That our raises haven't gone up at all. And they wanted a 4-day work week. And people were saying, oh, that's so lazy and everything. But when you talk to them more, it's okay, well, if they can get the work done in 4 days, they can get the work done in 4 days. And I hate when people would fight against that. It's like, why are you have such a hard on keeping
Yeah.
people at work for
Yeah.
multiple days?
Yeah, it's been like I hate that argument. So it's the same thing when the fight for 15 was happening, and it was like, oh, like somebody flipping burgers at McDonald's
Oh,
wants to
I
make
hate it.
$15. Like that's what an EMT makes. Like, why is your argument that and not why are we paying EMTs $15 an hour and they can barely support themselves on that damn $15 an hour? Why isn't your argument, hey, everybody needs to make more? Why the hell are these people being paid so little that they can't live?
Yeah, yeah. And why do we keep pretending flipping burgers is an easy job? Like, why does everyone pretend that like fast food workers are just like lazy and not doing? No, that's a hard job. I wouldn't want to do it. Yeah, so
Yeah.
definitely pay them more. And we were talking about like third parties. So this is the unfortunate reality that we face here on the left is that there aren't as many of us as we'd like there to be. That's just like when the rubber meets the road, that's the problem. In that I would
Yeah.
love for third parties to threaten the Democrats because that's the only thing that will get them to change. That if third parties, if a left third party does emerge, or enough leftists, say, well, I'm not going to vote for you, and they were actually afraid of losing, they would have to shift. But they're not because there aren't as much of us as we'd like.
Yeah,
And that's where he
yeah,
said like the actual working in your community would do something. Because listen, I have no respect for Republican conservative ideology, their goals. I think that they're pernicious. It's a blight on humanity, and I think that the conservative movement in the United States is honestly the greatest threat to humanity on earth. I don't think there's any argument against that. However, credit where credit is due. They put in the fucking work. They started 50
Oh yeah.
years ago in like getting involved in school boards, getting involved in local elections, putting together a ridiculous organization like the Heritage Foundation. And from like the Reagan days forward, they have been building this tower and trying to get exactly where they ended up getting. It started really with George W. Bush, and then kind of with Trump. Yeah, now they got judges, they got senators, they got school. They got Roe v. Wade overturned. So we've
Yeah.
got to be willing to put in that same amount of work if we're going to have that kind of success. It's like
Yeah.
it's just not the cool glamorous shit. You have to like actually start on your local community like they did because it does work. It may take a while, but it will.
Yeah, it took them 50 years to
Yeah,
overturn Roe, but they got it overturned. And
they
how
did
did
it.
they do it?
Mhm.
Grassroots. They
Exactly.
got people that were willing to let Republican candidates, traditional Republican candidates, lose until the Republicans finally started like running the people, no matter how batshit crazy they were, that they wanted like to run to get whatever their like issue was on the board. Like they did all of that. They were willing to lose. And
Yeah.
then now that they're like, just in the wish fulfillment mode, like it's like the Democratic Party, like the vote blue no matter who people, like they weren't doing it. They were just resting on the laurels. Oh, this will never happen. We'll never get to this state. And now we're in this state. And we want to immediately switch like that. And you can't. You can't do that because you had no supports. There was no thing to fall back on. There was no structure in place. There was no community. Like there was nothing. So it's like you got to build all of that shit up. You got to ramp that up. And it's going to take time. Like,
yeah, it's going to take time. And unfortunately, here's the thing with other Republicans, that they're the dog that caught the car, basically, especially with the Roe v. Wade thing, that they finally got everything they wanted. And now they're getting their asses kicked for it. And it's like the last like 3 elections, Republicans have underperformed even the polls. Like this is like last time in 2022, Democrats overperformed the polls by 9 fucking points. And then it was and then the 2023, the off-year election polls, Democrats crushed that too. And it's not because the Democrats are actually good. It's because regular ass normie people are creeped out by Republicans' fascination with children's genitals. They're weirded out by this abortion thing. No, I don't want if my 13-year-old gets raped, I don't want her to be forced to have a baby. And they've been bitching about a stolen election from 4 years ago, and they're still doing it. They get on stage talking about we need to put Dr. Fauci in jail. Just weirdos. There's a lot of them, and so it's actually not working for them like they planned, because the inmates are running the asylum. Like you used to have like Republicans who were demons, but they were demons that knew how to walk and talk like human beings, like the Reagans and the Bush seniors. But now you have Ted Cruz and Mike Johnson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the strangest, most bizarre, off-putting people imaginable. Because, like I said, the inmates are running the asylum now, and they're kind of getting punished for that. And my fear is that I think the Democrats are going to assert more dominance in the near future. I do, because what the Republicans have is unsustainable. Like their system makes no sense at all. Everyone's at each other's throats. They're firing their Speaker of the House every other day. Everyone's beholden to Donald Trump, who's picking fucking Herschel Walker to run for Senate. There's no way this is a winning system. So the Democrats, they're going to keep winning. They're going to keep winning, in the House and the Senate. I still think Biden's going to win, oddly enough. I'm not because he's a strong candidate, since from what I'm looking at, it doesn't look good for Republicans in any seat. But my concern is that then they have no incentive to change. Like what we're talking about is that as long as the Republicans are so crazy that them just showing up and saying, hey, I'm going to come to work and I won't bring a rifle with me. If you're like, okay, all right, that'll work. That sounds good. And that's my main concern, that we'll be stuck with this middle of the road policy, because they're not going to be afraid of us until, we can flex some power on them. I don't think we will anytime soon.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, one, like all they have to run on is just this ridiculous culture wars.
Right.
Bullshit. Because like their policies are just going to be wildly unpopular. Like you don't like, oh, we want to decrease the marginal tax rate. Like, dude, like we want to defund the education system. We want to defund all these other, like, bro, like what
is going on here? We
they
want to hold up this bill that provides free lunches for schools. Like, what is wrong with you people?
Yeah, like they want to take the money away from all of the things that a lot of the Trump voters actually want. Like, because a lot of them, I mean, one, I think the Democratic Party, like, and around like basically for all of the 2000s, almost, or a majority of the 2000s, the Democratic Party has been forgetting about just like the random, like just like the regular old working class folks that used to be the Democratic strongholds.
Yeah.
And like, which allowed somebody pretty charismatic that knew how to talk to those people, like to support all this random other bullshit. And it's like and now they're tripping over themselves. They don't know how to get back to that. And two, they've become more Republicans. That's why I say I have a Republican Party and an extra Republican Party, because like they went too far down the line of everything that actually hurts workers. Like they started supporting capital instead of supporting workers. And now you have a lot of people that just don't want to vote in general,
Yeah.
like that just don't vote in general. I mean, our turnout for elections is bullshit. Like, and the Democratic Party isn't competing with the Republican Party; it's competing with itself, like to try to get people to actually want to vote Democratic. Like they have no selling points when when the guy comes on and says, "Okay, and we're still gonna we're gonna cut this a little bit, but we're still gonna give it to you, but." Yeah, we have to balance this budget, and we're doing like they're doing all the Republican shit that the Republicans were doing like throughout the 90s. So like
Yeah, it's true that the Republicans offer up just horribly detrimental stuff, and they couch it by saying, oh yeah, sure, we're gonna lower the richest guy in town, we think he should have more money, but don't pay attention to that because did you hear that there is a man in a dress working at your school? And like, oh my god, and people they start losing their mind over bullshit like that. And the Democrats do the opposite. This is a weird thing, is that they will just push for like the most marginally, like for example, free lunch for school kids, which should just be the fact that this is a controversial like discussion whether or not kids should eat for free. Like we've made a decision that educating kids is important. Feeding them though, I don't know. We're gonna have to talk that one over. I'm not sure we want to do that. And so they'll just fight for like the most basic shit. But then they don't put their tent, they don't stake their tent. Neither party really stakes their tent on economic issues. They do it on social issues. And they're both equally weird because like you said, the Republicans will say, hey, there's a man in a dress at your high school and you should really be losing sleep over this. And the Democrats they'll make a huge announcement to say, all right, we are changing all the official documentation for the state. No, it won't say Latino anymore. It will say Latinx. I'm like, okay, who gives a shit? Like, what are we doing here? Like, why are we making this, like the stuff like that, a big deal when we could actually be helping people's lives in tangible ways? Because, like you said, they're service to capital, so they're not going to. And that's we're spinning our wheels in this shit.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like until there are people that are actually willing to talk about the economy like for real, like not in service of capital, like I don't see like lots of people just coming out of the woodwork to vote Democratic. I mean, that's like both parties are basically captured by like capital, that one thing. So like there's not gonna be any end. Like you can have some people that are really charismatic amongst the workers, but like they're not picking up everybody that they could be picking up.
Yeah.
So they have to say like it's actually fine if that person wears a dress in the school, instead of, okay, why are we talking about this person wearing a dress in the school? Let's fund school. I mean, like the top marginal tax rate was 70%, like until 1986. Like that made school really cheap for like all of the boomers. Like that funded like a ton of different programs. Like I mean, and this is during the real, like Reagan dismantled that shit, obviously, but like that, or was it? No, it was 50%, and then it became 30%, but it was 70% in like 1981. Anyway, the top marginal tax rate was like super high, which funded a lot of education, which funded all of these programs that really helped people. It was like 90%, like back in the 50s,
during the Eisenhower, like 90%. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that helped all of these people like come up. That funded everybody. It also made businesses like pretty much have no choice other than to share the wealth with their workers. Like the guy that like ran Sears, or was the owner of Sears, for example, like he was a far right. Like he was ideologically far right. I think he even like supported the Nazis during World War II. I have to like re-research this again because it's a video that I want to work on like in the future. But like this guy like was like so far right. Like, but every single employee at Sears, after you worked, I think it was like 10 or 15 years, you got put into the savings plan. Like even a janitor at Sears like ended up getting put into like a savings plan. They would have like the equivalent of, I think it was like $15,000 or something like that in their Sears savings account. like on top of getting profit sharing, on top of actually being paid a fair wage, people got like regular bonuses. People had profit sharing at Sears. I think it was something like a third of the employees like owned stock in Sears. So like they all were basically benefiting from like Sears doing well. Like, and it wasn't because like he was like because he like really cared about his employees and he wanted them to prosper or anything. It was because 90 cents of every single dollar that he made over $200,000 was going to go straight to the government. So it was like, okay, I can either make more money and give a shit ton of it to the government, or I can share that with the employees and just give them that, and that will incentivize them to do better, maybe for me. So that's what he did. And that's what so many other companies did. They had practically no choice other than help their employees out, pay them fairly, like which allowed them to do others. Now, it's like, let me go ahead and pull out the disclaimer for anybody that might clip this in the future. Black people were not part of this shit.
Yep,
Like,
yep.
Black people were so they were making sure they could like exclude Black people from any part of this. Okay, disclaimer, done. Like, but that's why a lot of people were able to build like some more wealth and like actually like live better, even though like not to say there weren't hardships and other shit like that, but like yeah, like companies had no choice. And now it's like, oh well, we need to tax these companies even less. Like both parties are saying that shit now.
So there's two things I want to add on that real quick is that this is why like what the MAGA, the Make America Great Again thing, when it's easy to trap people. So, well, what do you mean, when was it great? Because no matter when you say, you can always find something horribly wrong with the United States at the time. But the one element that they actually are correct about was like in the time you mentioned that, for white people, the United States economy was really good for the average worker, that you could graduate from high school, you could get a job anywhere. You could have good pay, decent benefits, and no college degree, and buy a house, get married, and support a family of 4 off of one income. Impossible today. That is an objectively better economic system that we have now. And think about marginal tax rates is, first off, people don't understand how marginal tax rates work. That's the first thing that you will see all the time. And I'm sure you guys have all heard someone say, well, man, I got a raise, but I don't want it to go too high because that'll put me in a higher tax bracket. That's not how tax brackets work, buddy. Like there is no scenario mathematically in which you get paid more money and make less than you would have if you hadn't gotten a raise because of taxes. It doesn't work like that. And because they think that, when you tell them you want a top marginal tax rates of 50% or whatever, they say, oh, so 50% of every nope, that's not what it means. That's not what a marginal that look up the word marginal. But anyway, but you're 1,000% right with the fact that they also confuse that having like that 90% marginal tax rates on the wealthiest is that it incentivizes you so much to reinvest in your business. Because for the exact same reason you said, okay, I can give 90 cents out of every dollar to the government, or I can give 90 cents of every dollar to my own business and not get taxed on it. Of course you're going to do that. Like, of course. And the poison pill that Reagan added in this as well is he got rid of the law saying that companies couldn't buy their own stock, which to this day, I cannot believe it's still legal. It is like, you couldn't come up with a better, like if you were trying to artificially inflate stock, that's exactly what you would write. Yeah. Okay, you can buy your own stock and artificially inflate it to make yourselves more money. Insanity that's still legal.
Like you just I recorded a video on, I forgot to edit this video, but yeah, I made a video specifically talking about how stock buybacks are just complete bullshit.
It's insane.
It is nonsense.
It's insane. It would be like if like the NBA just allowed referees to add points whenever they wanted. Yeah, sure. You want to add points, it's up to you. Your discretion. Go for it, man. It's like the fact if our stock market didn't crash every 15 years, maybe you would have some argument on that. But it's like actually they're getting shorter. The crashes are getting shorter now. We had one in the 80s. then one in the 90s, then one immediately in the 2000s, and then like two more since then. It's like, okay, this is not a stable system, and I don't know, it's not good, man. But
Yeah.
anyway, go ahead.
It's also all these companies like not having any money. It's like American, oh, we got to file for bankruptcy. How do you not have money? How did you have record profits and now you don't have money? Like, you did all those buybacks. Okay.
Yeah.
You took the money and then you spread it around to all these other rich people.
And the worst part is that, you know, these large corporations, they privatize the profits but socialize the costs. And so when people get upset whenever you talk about you know, the big banks or BlackRock or like these giant agencies, and you know the government says they're too big to fail. Well, they are. It's true. They are too big to fail. Like if they fail, our entire, we are living in the 1300s if they fail. Everything collapses. And so if that's the case, if we have to bail you out, we own you now. That should be the rule. If the government has to bail out your company, guess what? Everything's nationalized, and now all belongs to the American people because they're the ones who bankrolled you. Seems like a pretty fair trade-off to me, but I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
Yeah. Those lobbyists, they have so much money.
It's insane, man. It's dark. Well, we're trying to stay optimistic as the best we can, but I'll go ahead and wrap things up here. Thanks so much for coming on, man. This is great. We're doing it again sometime. Like
definitely.
I'm fortunate because I had conversations with you before on the show and everything. But if you want to go ahead and give a plug to all the folks, we can wrap it up.
Yeah, I am at What's Good English on all the platforms, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. I don't have, technically I have a Twitter account, but I lurk, so don't worry about it. If you find me, good. If you don't worry about it. I don't post nothing. But yeah, like follow me if you want to. Like there will be some language stuff, but like it's more politics right now. But yeah. And it's been super fun, man. I enjoyed the hell out of this conversation. It was super fun. We definitely got to do it again.
It was fun shit. Sobol, definitely old Army buddy. Definitely check out EK stuff. He's fantastic. Appreciate you coming in. But all right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Love, peace, chicken grease.
Cool.